Okay. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for registering for Bitter Cold and Whiteout Central New York's Winter Fury. I'm Kate Kisselstein, the junior librarian in the local history and genealogy department at OCPL's Central Library. And today we'll embark on a journey through the frosty annals of Central New York's winter history. Joining me is Carson Metcalf, meteorologist with WSYR's Channel 9 Storm Team and a Fulton, New York native, and who will provide invaluable insights into the meteorological nuances of our unique winter climate. As always, I'll try and leave time for questions at the end. Oop, and I better start sharing my screen. Let me try that again. There we are. So, here we go. So Central New York is virtually synonymous with winter, so it's important to understand our winter weather history. Today will not only be an overview of that history, but also a better understanding of what lake effect snow and wind chill factor are and why they matter. We'll also discover what lessons we've learned, including takeaways from those lessons that can be applied to today. Lastly, we'll learn about community resilience and adaptability in the face of everyday life in the snow belt that is Central New York. So, Central New York's winter weather history. The historical blizzard of impact, the blizzard of 1888, was one of the most severe snowstorms in U.S. history, impacting Central New York and shaping the region's approach to winter preparedness. We also learned emergency response improvements. The learnings from historical winter storms have led to improvements in emergency response strategies and communication systems, ensuring better preparedness and coordination during extreme weather events. And with local innovation, we'll explore how the challenges posed by Central New York's winters have inspired local innovations, whether in outdoor recreation, winter fashion, or other aspects of daily life. So early winter storms of note, you'll see 1783 to 1888. And the first of those was the Fort Oswego mission, where we learned just how bad lake effect snow can affect our ability to navigate even familiar landmarks. 1816 was the year without a summer, and we'll learn that a sense of community spirit can help all Central New Yorkers weather even the longest winters. 1856, a harvest of frost. We'll learn that ingenuity can help improve the way our roads get cleared, even after the most brutal of snowstorms. And 1888, the Children's Blizzard and the Great White Hurricane. We'll learn the difference between a severe winter storm and a truly brutal blizzard. The first storm we'll deal with is the February 1783 Fort Oswego mission. It was the waning days of the Revolutionary War, and Colonel Marinus Willett, who has ties to Central New York, was tasked by General George Washington to overtake the British-controlled Fort Oswego. Washington believed this strategic port needed to be recaptured to protect the region from enemy invasions. The ordered surprise attack on the British was to take place in the early morning hours of February 10th, owing to a few extra hours of darkness between the time that the moon would set and dawn. Willett and his men were led by a Native American guide, Captain John, an Oneida Indian, and they set out from Fort Herkimer on February 8th, crossing the frozen Oneida Lake on foot to save time. Bitter winds whipped across the lake, yet the soldiers persevered. By 2 p.m. on February 9th, they arrived at Oswego Falls, 13 miles from their destination, only to be met with drifts several feet high, which was surely the aftermath of a lake effect snowstorm. They struggled to make headway, but by 10 p.m., Captain John tells them that they are within 4 miles of Fort Oswego. Willett senses success is within their reach, Yet almost within sight of their goal, they discover an insurmountable obstacle. Their native guide must halt, as he has never had to navigate this area after such a snowstorm, and all familiar landmarks have been obliterated. Willett makes the difficult call to turn around and head back to Fort Herkimer. The conditions are still so brutally cold that two of his weaker soldiers are lost on Oneida Lake, never to be seen again. Once back at Fort Herkimer, Willett writes to Washington about his failure, and Washington's reply, "The failure," he writes, "must be attributed to some of those uncountable events which are not within the control of human means." That certainly is true of a central New York lake effect snowstorm. Our next one also has local ties, despite the fact that it starts with an event that happened over in Indonesia. The year without a summer, or as local author Jim Farfalia labels it, the winter that lasted all year, occurred in 1816. It may seem puzzling then that this was not the year of central New York's worst winter in recorded history. This phenomenon occurred after Indonesia's Mount Tambora erupted on April 10, 1850, spewing ash and dust into the upper atmosphere. While the heavier particles fell to the ground and on the ocean, when the lighter particulates reached the stratosphere, they spread out and created an aerosol cloud the size of Australia. This cloud blocked sunlight from reaching the Earth and changed the global climate by 2 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit, the effects of which devastated much of the world in what should have been the summer of 1816. According to information provided by the National Park Service, in May, a frost killed off most of the crops in New York, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. In June, heavy snow smothered the ground in Albany, New York, and in Maine, while frost persisted for 5 consecutive nights in Cape May, New Jersey. The relentless cold weather extended into late summer in what would have normally been harvest season. In July, lakes and rivers remained frozen as far south as northwestern Pennsylvania, while frost remained in Virginia into late August. Temperatures dipped from above normal summer temperatures to near freezing within mere hours, all because of a volcanic eruption on the other side of the world. According to an article in the Binghamton Phoenix dated June 11, 1816, we have had a spell of the coldest weather known by the oldest inhabitants at this season of the year. On Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of last week, large fires were necessary in our dwellings for our comfort. It was a novel and painful sight to see people on those days dressed in great coats and mittens, shivering with cold. Indian corn and garden vegetables are cut down to the ground with the frost, and it is feared entirely destroyed. This report was not isolated by any means and proved true. According to an article about the volcanic winter in the Fairhaven Register's April 20th, 1939 issue, one local farmer reported that on October 17th, 1816, when farmers should have been harvesting, the snows were 8 inches deep. The continuing bitter cold and resulting lack of food in the central New York area gave rise to one of the oldest women's organizations in the United States, Baldwinsville's Female Charitable Society, which is still active today. They provided blankets, warm clothes, and food to all people in need, both Native Americans and settlers, doing their best to ensure that none suffered. That sense of community spirit and resilience is still true of many central New Yorkers today. Our next early storm of note was the harvest of frost that happened in 1856. It proved to be another harrowing year for central New York, particularly for those in Oswego. As reported in the Oswego Daily Palladium, on February 5th, after a 4-day snowstorm closed everything in the area, quote, "The oldest citizens who have resided here for 50 years have never experienced anything that had approximated to it in severity, in duration, or the quantity of snow that has fallen," end quote. The year started with typical winter weather, but as one farm wife, Susanna Kenyon, reported, on March 25th, Lake Ontario was still covered in ice that extended as far as the eye can greet, the greatest amount remembered. April started with a warming trend that ended by the 28th and by May 4th, there was a chilling frost. The Kenyon family still had many mouths to feed and planted potatoes and wheat at the first chance. Their plantings were threatened by a second May frost on the 22nd, which would be followed 3 days later by snow. 5 days later on May 30th, snow squalls again came through the area, yet hopes of a bountiful harvest remained as the months of June, July, and August proved more temperate, only to be dashed by a severe frost that arrived on September 2nd. More frost came in October. Susanna described that the one that occurred on October 12th as a smart frost. By Halloween, 10 inches of snow had fallen, making completing farm chores nearly impossible. And then the region was once more plunged into true winter. What the Kenyon family experienced was by no means isolated to their town of Mexico, New York. Several reports can be found from the Oswego Daily Palladium, including an article on the ingenuity of city workers tasked with clearing the roads and streets. As stated by Jim Farfalia in his book, Historic Snowstorms of Central New York, one suggestion sounds like a primitive snowplow. Create a large triangle, say 10 feet width at one end, made of 3 heavy planks and some 3 feet in height. When coming upon a heavy snowdrift, the triangle, pulled by 3 pairs of horses, each with a rider, will take this through the deepest snow. Central New Yorkers have always shown ingenuity in their drive to cope with what nature throws at us. Our last early storm of note is 1888, which was the year of the Children's Blizzard and the Great White Hurricane. In 1888, there were 2 life-threatening blizzards that struck our country. The first one, which became known as the Children's Blizzard, hit the Midwest on January 12th around midday, while children were still at school. As per Jim Farfalia's book, the blizzard was the result of a frigid Arctic air mass that started in Alberta, Canada, and headed south, where it merged with a warm weather system from the Gulf of Mexico, a classic setup for disastrous winter weather. Within a few hours of cold meeting warm, the temperature over the plains dropped from just above freezing to 20 degrees below, then to 40 degrees below. Hitting Montana first, in the early morning of January 12th, the storm swept through the Dakota territories from mid-morning to early afternoon and reached Lincoln, Nebraska by 3 p.m., traveling over 1,100 miles, about the distance from Florida to New York City, in 12 hours. It also wreaked havoc on Wyoming and Colorado, and by the end of the day, approximately 230 people were dead. Among them were school children who'd attempted to make it home as the storm worsened, or who tried in vain to survive in schoolhouses ill-equipped to withstand the blizzard-like conditions. Central New Yorkers weren't directly affected by this blizzard, but were nevertheless horrified by the thought of children caught in such a storm. By March of that year, they were debating as to whether Central New York residents would have to fear for their lives during a blizzard. They didn't have to wait long to find out. The next blizzard that year came on March 11th and affected the entire East Coast. As Farfalia writes, the storm began when a low-pressure system sped up the Atlantic coast, making a direct hit on Long Island, and then barreled through the Hudson Valley. New York City ended up with 2 feet of snow before winds of up to 80 miles per hour thrust the storm onto central New York. Once there, the 3-day weather event would rival the children's blizzard in intensity, with snow totals of 3 feet in Utica and 4 in Albany. Syracuse was buried and entirely cut off from the eastern part of the state when area trains derailed and telegraph lines were disabled. While the temperature never fell below 0, the hurricane-strength winds made it seem much colder and created drifts that were reported up to 50 feet. Most disturbing, this blizzard would surpass the Midwest death toll, with over 400 people perishing. As of 2021, some still call it the greatest storm ever to hit the eastern United States. Of course, we'll probably have to wait until the storms of 2024 are in the books before we can challenge that claim. And next up, we have, I'll bring in Carson to explain a little bit about what wind chill factor is and why it matters.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. First of all, thanks so much for having me here. That was really great information. A lot of that I didn't even know. So really, really great stuff there with the history. And to your point, as you mentioned, top of mind in the winter, we think snow instantly, right? But we don't always think about the wind. I know certainly this week we have, given what happened across parts of our region Tuesday night and what we've got on the way in a couple of days. But essentially what wind chill is, the human body emits heat, as we all know. We kind of have an insulating layer that keeps us warm no matter what the weather conditions are outside. But when you add wind to that, the wind kind of blows right through it, takes away that insulating layer, making you feel even colder than what the thermometer may have you believe, right? So that's essentially what wind chill is. And it's so, so important because a lot of these storms, of course, yes, they come with snow, but they come with wind as well. And that wind can be particularly dangerous, not only because of causing damage, as we saw even just this week, bringing down trees and power lines and causing outages, but that wind chill factor is how the wind actually makes the temperature feel on your exposed skin. That's how it's defined. And that can be dangerous for frostbite if you're outside too long when the conditions are cold and windy. For example, you see the chart there. Take an air temperature around 20 degrees. When you add just a 35-mile-per-hour wind to that, that makes it feel more like zero. We know the temperature can actually get down to zero or even lower sometimes in the winter as well. An actual air temperature of zero with that same 35-mile-per-hour wind makes it feel more like minus 27. And of course, when you start talking about wind chill values in the teens and 20s, 30s, below zero and lower, you talk about impacts to kids getting up in the morning. You talk about school closings and delays, all really, really key things that we need to keep in mind. So, of course, with all these winter storms that we talk about, and as you mentioned with the one in 1888, not just the snow totals matter, but certainly the wind speeds, the gusts, and how it actually feels.
And then we have our lovely lake effect snow. We all just know and love it.
That's right. So a little basic kind of explanation of what lake effect snow is. So, we live right near Lake Ontario, and lake effect snow really starts with a scientific concept called specific heat. And what specific heat basically means is water having a high specific heat value means that water takes longer to heat up and cool down than other surfaces, like air, for example. We see the temperatures rise, they fall each and every day. But water takes a longer time to heat up and cool down, right? You microwave things, microwave some water, or heat things up in your kitchen every day, kind of the same concept. So after the summer and fall, that Lake Ontario water stays warmer longer. And as that water is warmer, we have cold fronts, different systems that blow across the lake. And as those cold air systems, those cold air masses blow along the lake waters of Lake Ontario, all the Great Lakes for that matter, it picks up all the heat and moisture thermals, they're called, that rise up. And that's how you get the clouds, the moisture to condense and form clouds. And that's how you get lake effect snow. Now, of course, there are a lot of different variables with lake effect snow as well. You have to have very specific, it's almost like a recipe, right? You have to have a very specific temperature difference. The temperature difference between the surface of that lake water and 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere has to be 13 degrees Celsius, okay, at least. That's what the difference is in the vertical here in terms of temperature. Not to get too much in the weeds, but it's very, very specific, those ingredients that we need, right? We need the cold air. We need exactly the right amount of cold air. And also, as we talk a lot about in our weather forecasts every day, and we're going to be talking about again later on this week, is the right wind direction. So in order to get the maximum amount of lake effect snow possible off of Lake Ontario, for example, you need what's called the maximum fetch. So that means on a west wind, think on a map how Lake Ontario is oriented. It's west to east. So if you want to pick up the maximum amount of heat and moisture relative to the cold air blowing over it over Lake Ontario, you need to have that west to east wind that picks up the full length of heat and moisture, all that possible moisture from Lake Ontario to then condense, precipitate, and that's how we see lake effect snow. So that's why, part of the reason why some of the hardest hit areas in our neck of the woods here in central New York in terms of lake effect snow is up on the Tug Hill Plateau, right? Not only are they straight east of Lake Ontario, but they're also up in elevation. So that cold air blowing in, once that air rises up over the Tug Hill Plateau, that cooling is exacerbated, and you've got potential for some really, really big snow totals. So a lot of different things, a lot of different ingredients, but we know, being Central New Yorkers, how often they come together, and those ingredients really, really can produce not only lake effect snow bands that last for hours, but as we know, days, close to, if not a little over a week. And that's what really the joy in forecasting it is really just, not completely knowing every twist and turn that may actually come out of that lake effect snow band, but trying to keep up with the modeling and really try and hone in on past lake effect events, for example, that we've covered, and see how they're similar, if the setup is different. And again, it all depends on that temperature and the vertical and the atmosphere, and really the wind direction. And those are the key pieces of how we put together that lake effect snow forecast.
Thank you, Carson. Now, coping with winter challenges. This is a little bit about how our ancestors coped. They made use of snowshoes and sleighs. They often relied on them to navigate through deep snow and transport goods. And the picture here we have, I actually found a picture of that the wooden triangular snow plow that they hitched to horses. This is a modern reproduction of one. Community cooperation. In tight-knit communities, individuals collaborated to clear roads and pathways, emphasizing the importance of communal support during challenging winter conditions. And hand tools and manual labor. Before the convenience of modern machinery, our ancestors used hand tools and engaged in manual labor to clear snow, ice, and create paths for travel and transportation. As a matter of fact, there was one blizzard that I read about that the snow was so packed in the roads that it couldn't be shoveled easily. So the men took to using long saws to cut out chunks of the snow and remove the snow that way. Now, as to the resilience and resourcefulness of early Central New Yorkers, we adapted to that lake effect snow. We developing strategies to adapt to the unique challenges posed by it, including designing sturdy buildings capable of withstanding heavy loads. We utilize the natural resources. Resourceful practices involve maximizing the use of these resources, such as harvesting ice from frozen lakes for refrigeration purposes in those early ice boxes, and leveraging the abundant timber for construction and fuel. Community support systems. Tight-knit communities fostered a spirit of cooperation and mutual support, sharing resources and collectively facing the challenges of extreme winter weather, showcasing the resilience of early Central New Yorkers. Now we come to some more recent winter storms of note. And this is just a little bit of an overview or a taste of what you can read in some of the books that I'll be sending out the list later today. The progression of winter storms. We have the blizzard of 66, a significant winter storm known for its intense snowfall and widespread impact on the region. The winter storm of 1978, notable for its severity and impact on transportation and daily life in Central New York. The blizzard of 93, Central New York's biggest winter storm to date, leaving a lasting mark on the area's winter history. And then the ice storm of 1998, which, while not a traditional snowstorm, this event had a profound impact on Central New York, causing widespread power outages and challenging conditions. The blizzard of 66, the storm of the century. The historic, first off, there's the historic snowfall. Central New York of blizzard of 66 is renowned for the record-breaking snowfall of 42 inches in just 3 days, with some areas received actually over 100 inches of snow during the storm. The extreme accumulation led to significant challenges for residents and authorities in managing its aftermath. In this picture, we see, it's actually from, the one picture's from a family collection. That's actually my grandfather who ran Palmer's Diner, which is the building on the left. And he is, always a smile on his face, ready to help people, and clearing a path so that people could get to the diner and eat some good warm food. Next, we have the blizzard or the winter storm of 1978, which brought central New York to a standstill with heavy snowfall, strong winds, and extremely low temperatures. The combination of these factors created hazardous conditions, impacting daily life and necessitating emergency responses. The storm resulted in a record-breaking snowfall, with some areas experiencing more than 2 feet of snow. Strong winds exacerbated the situation, leading to significant drifting and making it challenging for snow removal crews to keep up with the rapidly accumulating snow. The blizzard caused widespread transportation disruptions, with roads and highways becoming impassable. Stranded vehicles dotted the landscape as people struggled to navigate through the intense winter conditions. The event highlighted the importance of preparedness and community support during the severe winter storms in central New York. Next, we come to the blizzard of 93. Now, the central New York blizzard of 93 stands as one of the most significant winter storms in the region's history. It brought an unprecedented amount of snowfall, with some areas receiving over 40 inches of snow. The snow's intensity and duration made it a memorable event for residents. The sheer volume of snow and the storm's duration led to widespread disruptions in the daily life. Schools, businesses, and services were heavily impacted, and travel became extremely challenging. The blizzard prompted community members to come together to overcome the challenges posed by the severe weather. And the blizzard of 93 showcased the resilience of central New York communities in the face of extreme weather. Neighbors helped each other with snow removal, emergency services responded effectively, and the event spurred discussions on improved preparedness for future winter storms. And we come to the ice storm of 1998. Central New York the ice storm was characterized by prolonged freezing rain, leading to the accumulation of a thick layer of ice on surfaces such as roads, trees, and power lines. This ice accumulation resulted in hazardous conditions and widespread disruption. The weight of ice on power lines and trees caused extensive power outages across the region. The ice storm highlighted the vulnerability of local infrastructure to severe winter weather, prompting discussions about the need for improvements and resilience measures. In the face of widespread power outages and difficult travel conditions, central New Yorkers demonstrated a strong sense of community. Neighbors again assisted each other, local emergency services provided support, and the event underscored the importance of community resilience and preparedness for all winter weather challenges. But which of those was the biggest? 93. 93 is the one that beats out all the other storms so far. This picture is a satellite image of the storm that as it blew up the East Coast. And was this the biggest storm in central New York history? Yes, it really was. While the region struggled longer to dig out from the blizzard of 66, which lives in everyone's memory, the blizzard of 1993 dumped more snow on the area, 43 inches compared to 1966's 42 inches. Much like the year without a summer, the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo is believed to have played a role in the formation of 1993's storm of the century. The blizzard began in central New York on Friday, March 12, 1993, and continued through Monday, March 15th, before finally dissipating over the Atlantic. And how its severity was measured. This is according to Jim Teskey's Winter Index, a link, which I'll send you a link to that this afternoon. The winter of 92-93, quote, remains the snowiest winter on record in Syracuse. After a slow start, the winter kicked into high gear in January. The winter was highlighted by the blizzard of 93 in March that dropped 43 inches of snow over 3 days, a record for one storm. In spite of that, it would not have been a record winter if not for nearly 8 inches of snow towards the end of April. And that even includes the winter of 2019-2020, which was the last update I saw for the winter index. And there's Jim Teskey's official equation for how he calculates where the storms fall in the winter index. Now, the winter of 92-93 ranks number 1 at 158.7, while the winter that includes the blizzard of 66, which dropped 42 inches of snow over 3 days, only ranks at 32 with a 97 on the index. So what lessons have we learned from this? We've learned that embracing winter-ready spaces is important, discovering the importance of creating spaces that can stand up to heavy snow, ensuring our neighborhoods remain safe and accessible even during the most challenging winter storms. We need to plan for the unexpected, uncovering the value of having a personal and community plan in place for unexpected winter events, from creating cozy home environments to knowing where to turn for assistance. Becoming winter-ready individuals, realizing the power of individual preparation, having a winter kit on hand, learning essential winter survival skills, and staying informed about changing weather conditions to navigate winter with confidence. And understanding winter's ways, exploring the fascinating world of winter weather, gaining insights into the unique challenges posed by snow, ice, and cold temperatures, and fostering a deeper connection. So community preparedness. We learned clearing paths together, recognizing the strength in communal snow removal efforts, where neighbors join forces to clear paths, ensuring everyone can move freely and safely in the winter wonderland we call home. We have a neighbor down the street from us who routinely will come by with his snowplow, his snowblower, and he makes sure that our dog has space to get around. And because he knows our dog likes to be able to go right to the fire hydrant out front. Keeping everyone in the loop, valuing effective communication systems that keep us connected and informed during winter storms, creating a sense of community and shared responsibility. Safe havens for all, appreciating the importance of emergency shelters as warm and welcoming spaces during severe winter weather, where neighbors come together to weather the storm and support one another. And cozy winter-ready homes, embracing community initiatives that winterize our homes, making them cozy and energy-efficient sanctuaries that keep us warm and comfortable throughout the winter months. One of the strategies that came about was actually after the January 4th, 1994 snowstorm dumped 5 inches per hour during the late morning and lunch hour. Nearly all businesses in downtown Syracuse closed at 1 p.m. The roads quickly became clogged with thousands of commuters who struggled to get home, particularly after the main arteries of routes 81 and 690 shut down for the snow emergency. Then Mayor Roy Bernardi decided that a plan of action was called for, one that would allow the most commuters a chance to get home as quickly and safely as possible. A key part of the plan that developed was phased departures for workers. Phase 1 being those workers who lived 10 miles or more away from Syracuse. Phase 2, released a half an hour later, being those who lived between 3 and 10 miles away, and Phase 3 being released another 30 minutes after that, being those who lived within a 3-mile radius of the city. So the conclusion, and this is actually a picture of the fire hydrant our dog insists is his, that's out in front of our house. And this was winter of 2015 when we had to clear it out to make sure that it was accessible. Together, we have got this and we will make it through the winter. So are there any questions?
Hey, Kate, this is Gina Odell. Just an anecdote on the blizzard of 66. I was 11 and I grew up out on the west side of Skaneateles Lake, in Mandana, about 6-7 miles down from the village. And I remember that Sunday, I think it started with all this light, fluffy snow. And then within a few days, we were socked in. And in those days, a lot of the farmers not only drove school bus, they also did the plowing of everybody out. But first, either the county or the state plows had to get down the road. So it wasn't until Friday or Saturday that we heard this big roar. We had a very long driveway, down into by the lake, but we could still see up to the road. And down the road came one of the big plows, and then not that long afterward, we heard this big roar, and it was our farmer friend, George Dabrowski, who was coming down our driveway with his bulldozer, and he got us bulldozed out, and we all had fun building snow forts with the piles after that.
Oh, I'm
But
sure.
it was frightening. I mean, the height along the road, we walked up there, the height of after the plow went down was, quite something.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know what it seemed to me when it was the winter storm of 78 is the one I remember. And somewhere we've got a picture of me standing next to my dad, and I had a little toy snow shovel helping him, but it's like I still remember the forts we made with the snow that came off the side of the road. Yeah. Anyone else with a memory to share or a question? Okay.
I'd like to ask our meteorologist friend from Channel 9, what do you see for the rest of the winter?
That is a great question. Well, we got off to a slow start, as we all know, in December after several slow winters. But as you've probably noticed in the last couple of weeks, the pattern has really, really ramped up. We're talking about storm number 3 in just a week on the way beginning tonight. I expect it to stay, at least in the short term, pretty active. It does look like we're just in that kind of pattern in the upper atmosphere where things are just going to keep cranking here in terms of some snow. Overall, though, we did feature in our winter weather outlook back a couple of months ago, generally thinking we're going to have a little better snowfall because of El Nino and that change in pattern this year versus the past few winters. I mean, it's been several winters since we've even gotten 100 inches of snow in Syracuse. I think we're probably going to get there this winter. I think it's going to be a little bit more active than the past few.
Is it too early to see ahead for spring at all? I have a vegetable garden, and last spring it was great until we got some 90-degree days, and then everything was hurt. But can you tell anything at this point, or is it too early?
Still a little bit too early at this point, but yeah, I definitely remember last spring. I mean, I think it was in April we had 3 or 4 80-degree days in a row, and then, as you said, just the
that was
heat
it.
was so persistent. But yeah, a little early at this point to look ahead, but we'll keep you posted as we always do.
Oh yeah.
Well, maybe you could do a little story some night on the news on that later down the road.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Thank you so much.
So, does anyone else have any memories or questions for either of us? Yes, Bill?
I had a question. I hope this makes sense. When we're looking at historical records, were the temperature readings, first of all, the instrumentation 150 years ago or 100 years ago, were the temperature readings reasonably accurate? And how widespread were the readings geographically to make determinations about, say, climate change and that sort of thing now in this area?
That's a very good question. Carson, would you like to try that one?
I'd say reasonably accurate is probably a good way to characterize it. I'm not an expert necessarily in the instrumentation back then, but I could speak just in Syracuse terms. Obviously, it's gotten really, really precise now when we have all of our airport reporting sites, right? That's kind of the typical way that we've got measurements of temperature, of snowfall, precipitation. So luckily they have gotten better with time. But I would say a reasonably accurate, is probably the best way I would put that back then.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Thank you. And does anyone else have any questions, comments?
No, I'm just glad I live in Southern California.
Yeah, we'll have you send us some more sunshine.
Kate, I thought I saw a couple of chat messages.
Oh, goodness.
We're complaining of a 40-degree temperature and sunshine. That was very, very interesting. My ancestors were from Onondaga County and oh,
Oh,
I don't know if there's still some of the families left there, but my second great grandfather left in 1853 and went to Illinois.
oh, wow. Okay. I do see we do have some questions in the chat. Apologize for that. So KDV, is that schedule of letting workers go based on the miles away their home is, the city of Syracuse only, or for the city of Syracuse only, or is this implemented anywhere else in Onondaga County? I'll be honest, I found that in our resources here at Central Library. That was a plan that was developed specifically after the January 94 blizzard. It's one that could be used as a template elsewhere, but I'm not certain if it is. But it was based on the distance from their workplace to their home. So I hope that answers the question. Let's see. And then this one actually looks like it's more for you, Carson. The question is, how are significant snowstorms looking for 2023, 2024?
Well, I think just given the general pattern we talked about a few minutes ago with switching from La Nina over to El Nino, that's been the biggest thing. Typically, we would see more snow this winter than we have in the setup the previous few winters. So definitely, as we're in now, we're in that more active storm pattern. I think we're probably going to get to experiencing a winter that's more reminiscent of some past winters, maybe not to the extent of a 93 or a lake effect 07 or a 66, anything like that, but definitely anticipate this winter to still continue to be rather active here as we head right through the balance of the season.
Oh, thank you.
Carson, I wanted to tell you that I really appreciated your explaining lake effect snow. I've been wanting to understand that for a long time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. No, it's a fascinating concept, and growing up in Fulton, that's one of the big reasons why I wanted to get into doing this is lake effect snow. It's just fascinating.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much, Carson, for joining us. I really appreciated it. I knew a meteorologist would have a better handle on lake effect and wind chill and all sorts of details like that than I would.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much for having me. This has been great.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions or comments,
Kate, I have one.
oh, you do have one, Corey. Okay.
I'm sure my husband would like to see this too. Is there going to be a recording available for us?
Yeah, I'm going to be making it available next week.
Great.
Once I have it edited and I get it to our communications, we'll get it up on our YouTube channel.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you interested in the genealogy program, that's going to be the Census Chronicles, and that will be on January 26th, Friday, January 26th from 10 to 11 a.m. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all
Thank
later.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you, Carson.
Yes.
Thanks to all. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.